So, Vauban Heirloom is out next week on the 11th, and last night Digital Extremes put up their dev workshop post in order to better explain all of his upcoming changes, along with some new information that they didn't mention during the last dev stream. So let's just jump in, because it's Friday and I'm dosed with the flu, so I need to get through this as quick as possible. Now, the idea behind his touch-up is to make Train Man feel less clunky, make his kit feel more modern, more reliable. They've also updated his in-game tooltips to better clarify what scales with enemy level, like Flechette, and of course his Photon Strike, but his new passive now better explains how much damage it will boost against incapacitated enemies, and enemies affected by electric status from his Tesla Nervos will now also take bonus damage, but they want this to eventually be all sources of electric status to boost his damage, not just his Tesla Nervos. But that bit isn't going to make it into the game in time for his Heirloom release, but it means that eventually more sources of electricity will benefit Vauban greatly. Now, his first ability, his Tesla Nervos, have received changes to make them easier to track. Their status chance now scales off power strength, so more power strength means more electric procs. The Nervos themselves are now going to spread to better prioritise enemies outside of the range of another Nervos in order to spread electric status effects more evenly, and they can target ragdolled enemies. They attach at first contact and instantly shock so that their effect starts immediately. They have better targeting so that not to try and latch onto flying enemies, and the Tesla Nervos Bank augment now marks enemies that they're latched onto so that you know which enemies that you have to shoot. Now, his second ability, his Minelayer, for me has received one of the biggest changes. Basically, you used to have to cycle between all four of Vauban's mines, which at times in gameplay felt a little bit clunky. Now you either have to tap it to cast two mines, or you hold it to cast the other two. Tapping the ability will cast his Tether mine and his Flechette mine at the same time, which will then group up enemies and shred them with the Flechette. And holding the ability will cast his Overdrive pad and his Vector pad. Stepping on the Overdrive pad will give you and your teammates a 25% speed boost, and his Overdrive pad now also affects the damage output of your companions as well. So the good news is there is no change whatsoever to his Flechette orb. It's still going to do the damage, or the crazy amounts of damage it did before this update. However, the Tether mines will now better pull enemies in, and they will target enemies outside of Bastille, so any enemy that goes into Bastille is not going to target those. Now, his Photon Strike, which is his third ability, which Vauban 3D prints above every planet he goes to, because that's how awesome he is also getting some big changes. Now, this is the ability that a lot of Vauban players will subsume off in order to put Nourish on, because that's one of the most effective builds for Vauban right now. But they want this to deal more damage and be seen as more of a power ability that you can use more often. So instead of relying on Flechette Orb, you might be more inclined to actually use his Photon Strike. So enemies hit by the explosions of his Photon Strike will take a Forced Blast status effect. It deals double damage against overguard enemies, so Eximus units, and its energy cost is reduced by 50. Its range is increased by 2 meters, and enemies no longer will get ragdolled out of Bastille if they get hit by that explosion. Now, the Photon Repeater augment, when it hits 5 or more enemies, will make its next cast cost no energy and fire off 2 Photon Strikes instead of 1. So I know some train enthusiasts enjoy spamming Photon Strike builds. This looks like it's going to be way more effective and a more efficient build that you can possibly run, and it's also going to deal more damage, but it's going to deal more damage against Eximus units or enemies that have overguard, which means you might see way more trains running around spamming Photon Strike than you did before this change, because it's going to be more reliable. Now, the main change for his fourth and his ultimate ability, Bastille, is that its enemy cap is gone. It can grab as many enemies that can walk into its radius. The compromise here from DE is you are now limited to having 4 Bastilles and 4 vortexes at any one time. Casting a 5th one will basically replace one of the existing ones. I know this is a sore point or a sticking point for some Vauban players who enjoy spamming Bastilles, but you're going to have to, I guess, wait for the changes to drop and jump into the game and check him out yourself to see how it feels, whether you like it or not, and you can let me know. The armor cap that Vauban gains from enemies trapped inside his Bastille is now 1500, up from 1000, so it's gained 500 armor. Vauban and allies will also gain that armor buff, and it will strip armor from enemies twice as fast as it does in game right now. They've also toned down some of Vauban's abilities' visual effects to make them less intensive for teammates. Basically, you're not going to blind your teammates if you've got all white energy. And Vortex's magnetic status effect now scales with power strength as well. So more power strength means that's going to proc way more often. Now, his repelling Bastille augment has been renamed to Enduring Bastille, where killing enemies inside that Bastille will now add 2 seconds to its duration, up to a cap that is basically double the percentage of what your current duration is for that frame. So everything is pretty much a buff for the new Vauban, with his heirloom dropping on the 11th, with the exception to that 4 Bastille limit that you're now going to have, whereas before you could pop down as many as you wanted. They've made his Nervos way more reliable to help spread electricity and proc his passive so that you're doing more damage. His Minelayer is less clunky by removing that 4 mine cycle option and allowing you to tap or cast. His Photon Strike is going to deal more damage, increase damage to Overguard Eximus units, and it's going to be cheaper to cast, not to mention that it can cast twice at the same time with his augment. His Bastille will give more armor, it will strip armor faster from enemies, can hold unlimited enemies, and eventually they want his passive to proc off all sources of electricity, meaning bringing anything that deals electrical status effect with you, which your Vauban, will make him deal more damage overall. Now, like I said, his heirloom drops on the 11th of February. We might get some more changes before then, who knows, and they'll definitely, well, more than likely, they'll fine-tune him for a day or two after that release as well, just in case he is overpowered. I know Pablo had said something on the dev stream in relation to it having an unlimited amount of enemies being able to be held in the Bastille, and he said we'll see what happens when it goes live. But let me know in the comment section below what you think of his touch-up. I'm kind of hoping, now that I guess Vauban is out of the way, that the next frames that they might look at for a potential rework, or at least for a potential touch-up, might be Banshee, since I am Irish and Banshees are Irish, and I really want to see Banshee reflect what an actual Banshee is. Also, we know within the community that Limbo is a frame that is definitely someone that they need to look at, but let me know in the comment section below what other Warframes you think could be possibly in line for some kind of a touch-up between now and the end of the year, or ones that you would like to see get a touch-up between now and the end of the year. It is the weekend. Have a great weekend, have a great day, and as always, thanks for watching.